Hey everyone, welcome back. I am the Electrical Code Coach, and this is the Estimating Masterclass. This is episode 3, where we're going to dive into hourly versus bid, how to bid a job. Do we ever charge by the hour? Let's get to it. Before we dive into whether or not we should be charging by the hour or by the bid or when to use either method, we need to first learn what our hourly rate is. Our hourly rate is going to be our day rate divided by our average number of hours billed out. I don't want you to divide by your average number of hours worked. I want you to divide by your average number of hours billed out. And the reason is because you're only physically making money while they're working, but you're going to be paying them more time than that. To keep this one simple, I'm going to just divide by 8. We have 1100, which was our day rate. We're going to divide it by 8 hours, and you need to be billing out at least 137.5 hours to cover cost, payroll, make sure that you're profitable, right? That's keeping the doors open. And we're going to learn about when or when not to charge by the hour here in just a moment. If you have 2 crews, you can divide that by 2. Each crew needs to be billing out 68.75. Now, we're not going to use those exact numbers. I would say the first one should be 140 and the second one should be 70 or 75. And you may be able to demand much higher in your market, so do not undercut yourself on your hourly rate. Just keep that in mind. Now, one thing I do want to point out about last week when we covered our day rate and our hourly rate, those are not numbers that we're throwing around to customers. Never go to a customer and be like, we charge $1,100 a day. Never say that. What you do is you go in and look at the job, and if you think it's going to take about a day, then you'll tell them it'll be about 1,100. Now we're going to dive into hourly, when we should and when we shouldn't. Why do we need to know our hourly rate? For one, for small jobs and add-ons. When you're doing small jobs and add-ons, it's easy to tell a customer, oh, I'll just go ahead and include that at no extra cost, or since this is such a large job, I'll add that on the bid. Now, occasionally you may do something like this, but let me warn you against that. You might give a $60 switch away, right, the labor and all, and if you do it one time, it's not a big deal. But if you do that over a year and it equals $3,500 or $5,500, you've given away Christmas bonuses. You've given away another vacation your family could have took. So be very careful in giving stuff away. One good reason to know your hourly rate is for small jobs. Let's say it's just a 2-hour job and you know the customer really well and you want to be able to give them the absolute lowest prices possible. You might not give them your half a day rate. You might say, hey, let's just do this one by the hour real quick. I need this and that. And, I need $137 an hour or $140 an hour, and we'll just charge you for whatever time we do. We're not going to live our life like that. In our next section, we're going to learn about hourly or bid, and I'm going to explain to you why that you have to do both, but why you need to prefer another almost always. And another reason that we want to know our hourly rate is because of add-ons. Let's say they want to add on 2 switches. Be like, listen, this is a large project. I don't want to nickel and dime you guys. Let me charge you by the hour for those 2 switches, and I guarantee that you'll save a lot of money. That way you're not having to, because what can happen is, let's say you have a $4,500 kitchen remodel, and they're happy with that price. Well, day one, they want to add on 2 switches in the dining room. And you tell them your half a day rate, you tell them 550 plus parts, and they look at you like you're silly because they feel like you're trying to take advantage of them now that you're there. So instead of that, you've already got a good solid job on the $4,500 job. Just say, hey, would you let me charge you by the hour on those 2 switches? I guarantee that you'll save money instead of me just charging you by a whole half a day. And they're going to appreciate that. It's going to allow you to get paid for it. You're not going to be giving any work away, and you're not going to put a stain or discomfort on a job that's already going so well. So just keep that in mind there. Now let's go ahead and dive into the difference between hourly and bid, why we need to know both, but when we need to apply one or the other. Let's look at the question, when do we charge by the hour? And should we be charging by the hour or by the bid? Well, I submit to you that you need to be doing both. And let's talk about when it's appropriate to charge by the hour. First off, and this may be trade specific, you may own a coffee shop or dentistry, and you may not, this may not relate to you, but in our industry in electrical, we're always going to charge by the hour for troubleshooting. Always, 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 you never give a blank check for troubleshooting. You might be there 30 minutes troubleshooting, you might be there 3 hours. Now, I'm going to situationally walk you through here in just a moment how to charge by the hour and how to approach the customer for troubleshooting, but definitely when doing troubleshooting. But then I want you to switch over to flat rate pricing once you find the problem, as we're going to discuss. Some commercial service work. There are some commercial outfits that will not allow you to do it by the bid. They have to be charged by the hour. And if that's the case, what I recommend you do is that you need to come up with a commercial by the hour rate that you charge. Let's say your hourly rate for residential is $140. Your commercial rate should be $250 or $350 an hour. And I have no problem letting someone know if they're very adamant on me charging for the entire project by the hour, especially in a commercial setting, that I will go ahead and charge them. Basically, if I think it's going to take 4 hours, I'll take my day rate and divide it by 4, and that's what I'm going to charge them an hour, because we don't charge like that. And then, go from there and let them bill. But some commercial service work, they will not take any other estimate. They have to do it by the hour. It's just the way they work. It may be an industry standard in your industry. I had a guy take this class who did crane electrical work. He worked on cranes and troubleshot cranes, and he worked on other parts of the cranes as well. And his industry just is by the hour. His first big project that he went to go estimate, he knew the people, he thought he was a shoe-in, and he submitted a bid, but it was a flat rate project. Well, they ended up giving the bid to somebody else who charged by the hour, which is their industry standard. He went back to the business a few months later and found out, that they got the project, and he found out how much they charged, and he found out that they ended up charging more than his bid was, but because his bid was not industry standard, he did not win it. So you have to understand that it may be industry standard. And his question was, Perry, what do I do? How do I make more money since I can't ever bid the jobs like that? Well, I told him that he's going to have to start having things like add-ons. And a good add-on is surge protection. So he might come into this industrial setting, they're having him fix cranes or run a new circuit to whatever they're working on, and then he'll offer them that by the hour, but then he'll say, if you would like surge protection as well, it's 300 plus the materials or whatever. So he can start having some add-ons in order to start making some more money than just by the hour. The second thing that it is great for when we charge by the hour, like I said before, is small jobs and add-ons to big projects. It just makes it very simple. The theme that I want you to get today, and I've got to get this through to you or you will never be truly successful, is you got to stop trading time for money. Stop trading time for money. The world is designed that you trade an hour of your time for X amount of dollars. That is poverty designed. The entire system is poverty designed. Yes, theoretically, you are trading some amount of your time for some amount of money, but stop limiting yourself in life by the number of hours that you work. You have worked hard in your business. You will have worked your way up. You have licenses. You have insurance. You have all of these things. You can't quantify how much money you deserve an hour, right? Because they're paying you for back knowledge and back troubleshooting and back experience and all the time, work, and effort that you've put into. They're not buying you fresh on the job site. They're buying this improved version of you, and you can't put a dollar amount on that. So you've got to stop trading time for money. You will continually be poor. Like we've said in every video in this series, and I liken it to working by the hour. Working by the hour is like eating soup with a fork. You keep eating, but you never get full. Keep that in mind. You've got to stop trading time for money. Now let me explain the only time that I charge by the hour unless it's a special circumstance. And that's when it comes to troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is just one of those things. I don't know how long it's going to take, and I'm not going to write a blank check for the customer. Let me show you how I approach a phone call when a customer calls me, and I'm going to give you some specific tips here that you can carry with you. Let's imagine that a customer calls me, and they have some lights flickering in the basement, and they're really worried about them. This is when I start asking questions, and I'm going to ask so many questions that they're thinking, is this guy going to help me, or is he just going to ask me questions all day? But when you get so good that you can only take 6 out of 10 jobs that come your way, you better get really good at asking questions on the front end because you don't have time to waste. I'm going to make sure, for one, that I can do the job, for two, that I can deliver a high quality of service, and for three, that I want to do the job. Because when your phone starts ringing so much that you really only can do 6 out of 10 jobs that come your way, you've got to get a really refined palette for your work. So if this customer called me and the lights were flickering and they were really worried about it, the first question I'm going to ask is, how long has the problem been going on? Because they'll wait till Friday at 5 o'clock to call you and be like, I need someone out here right now. And if you're not careful, you will jump to their emergency and you'll call one of your guys who's already went home for the weekend and you'll send him back out there, or you'll drive out there yourself and you'll find out that this problem's been going on for 6 weeks. Sometimes I've had someone call me and say it's been going on for 6 months. And you may have made it an emergency for yourself when somebody else didn't make it an emergency for themselves. It's funny, if somebody has a leaky sink, they'll call a plumber that evening, but they can have arcing wires in the basement or flickering lights, and they won't call an electrician for 6 weeks. I've just never understood that. So the first question I'm going to establish is my emergency response. If these lights just started flickering and they're worried, it might be an emergency for me to go out there. But if they've been flickering for 6 weeks, it's likely not an emergency. But I'm not in the business of telling them that. I'm just not going to make it an emergency for myself. The second thing I'm going to ask them is, what year was the home built? What year was the home built? And I'll say it just like that because at this point in the conversation, I'll find out usually if it's a mobile home or if it was a site-built home. Then when they tell me the year it was built, I'm going to know some things electrically. If they tell me that the home was built in the 1920s, then I'll know that it likely has knob and tube wiring. If they tell me that the home was built in the 40s, I'll know that it might have soldered joints and that the power bundle for that circuit is going to be in the ceiling box because that's just the way they did it then. Also, if it was wired in the 70s or the home was built in the 70s, it'll let me know that they might have some crimped joints or some stab lock receptacles. This is very specific to electrical, and you electricians who are listening know what I mean, but this is very important no matter what your trade is, that you ask some questions that are, for one, going to let you know a lot of information about the homeowner, the customer, how they gauge emergencies, whether or not you want to work with the customer at all, but it will also start pointing you in the right direction for your troubleshooting before you ever step foot on site. Now let's get down to pricing. I'm going to explain it to you, and then we're going to go to the next slide and fill in some of these prices. And I'll actually do like a mock phone call and explain to you how I talk to the customer about this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the customer know that I charge a certain amount to come out. That's their trip charge. And you can use whatever verbiage there that you like. And that it's going to be, and that will also include about an hour of troubleshooting. And I'll let them know that I find most problems within that first hour. And then I say, once I find the problem, I'm going to switch over to flat rate pricing, and I'll tell you what the total for today will be. They work by the hour, right? They understand hourly wages. And if you tell them you charge $150 an hour, and they have 2 master's degrees and they only make $43 an hour, and you show up and you look like, I don't want to say a hillbilly, but I mean, you look like somebody that has never, in their eyes, has never been to college, doesn't know anything, when really you may be twice as educated as they are. And they say, this guy's charging me $150 an hour. It just leaves a stain there. Trust me, we're going to dive farther and deeper into this hourly business and how it is so much psychological. But I just want to plant that seed now that they work by the hour. They've worked really hard in their career. They're making $30, $40, $50 an hour. And when you walk up at 29 years old and tell them you're going to charge them $150 an hour, it doesn't sit very well. So what I'm going to do, not only for them, but for me, is I am going to switch over to flat rate pricing because I don't trade time for money. I'm not in that business. You are paying me for the collective of my experience and my reputation. That's why I don't charge by the hour. You couldn't pay me enough to charge by the hour. The whole point is that I'm going to flat rate price, and then I can go to work working hard to increase how much I make in the hour that I'm there. All right, now let's start talking numbers. In this mock company, we had around $137 an hour that they needed to charge. I submit to you that you need to be charging more for that first hour, right? And I don't even tell them what it would be if there is a second hour, and I'll explain that here in a second. I've wrote it down here so you can see the total breakdown, but let me go through an actual phone call of how I would approach the situation. They've called, I went through all the questions. I feel good. I feel like I want to work with the customer. We're going to be able to work good together. And really what you'll learn as you get farther into this is that this is a screening process. When they call you, it's just as much an interview for you to them as it is them to you. I'm not working for someone if they're rude, short-tempered. I've had people scream at me on the phone. Like, I'm not working for you. I only take 6 out of 10 phone calls. I'm trying to help you, and you're being rude to me. How do I think the rest of the project's going to go if you're a jerk on the phone for that first phone call? And they feel the same way about you. Just keep that in mind. How I would handle this situation here is I'd say, ma'am, that sounds great. So we charge $150 for the trip charge, and that buys our first hour of troubleshooting. I find almost all problems within that first hour. And then as soon as I find the problem, I'll switch over to flat rate pricing and give you a solid quote on what it'll take for the total cost for today. The reason I do that is a couple of reasons. First off, I don't trade time for money. I don't want to be working by the hour. Let's say you go out for 150 and it takes 2 hours and you are going to charge them, a total of 150 or 250. Let's just make it easy math. Let's imagine that you go out there and you're going to bill them a total of 250 based on your time. And you fixed 3 switches, 2 receptacles, and a breaker. You changed a breaker out. And your total labor was 250. I go out there and I will let them know that it's 150 for the trip charge. And then when I find the problem, and let's imagine I found the exact same problem, the switches, the receptacles, and the breaker. You spend an hour and a half and charge them 250, you did well. I stop, I look at how long it's going to take, and I will charge them based off of my half a day rate or whatever the intrinsic value of the job is. You go out and bill out 250. I would have stopped and said, ma'am, that sounds great. I found the problem. We need to change out these 3 switches, these 2 receptacles, and this breaker, and it'll fix your problem. And I'll be like, that'll be about 450 plus parts. Boom. I get the job done in the same amount of time, the hour and a half. The customer knew up front. They're not wondering at the end, how long is this going to take? Watching you, seeing if your employees are in the bathroom or on the phone. How many of you have ever charged by the hour and you get phone calls saying, your guys took a 45-minute lunch instead of a 30-minute lunch. I better not be billed for that. When I charge by the flat rate, I'm never worried about that. They don't care how long it takes. They know how much the bill's going to be before I even start the work. You go out and make $250 in an hour and a half. I go out and make $450 in an hour and a half. That's why I switched to flat rate bidding. Listen, you may have many employees, and this might take some time to teach them how to do this. Send them out for the 150, tell the customer, and how I treat it if I do go over an hour of troubleshooting is I will have 150 for the first hour. I'll do that full hour, and I'll say, ma'am, I have to continue charging by the hour. It'll be 137 to continue by the hour, but I feel like I'm hot on the trail of this troubleshooting. I won't do it if I'm not hot on the trail. I'll be honest and say, hey, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I have to charge by the hour. But as soon as I find the problem, we're going to switch over to that flat rate pricing that I was talking about. I don't talk about more than 1 hour usually to the customer, period, because usually I can find all problems within an hour. So I go out and I make $450 on the project that you made $250 on. Now that may not sound like a lot of money to you based off of 1 crew, but what if you had 3 crews doing that? Instead of sending your boys out at 150 plus 137 an hour, what if you could train your men and women to go out and get 150 for that first hour and then switch over to the flat rate pricing? So you go out there, they think it's going to be these 2 GFCIs. They figure out how long it's going to take them to run to Lowe's, get the parts, and come back. And they say, boss, I think it'll take me about 3 hours. You charge your half a day rate and just go ahead and include the troubleshooting right in with it. And you go back to the customer, and instead of them billing out $450, you tell the customer, whatever the scenario, and you tell the customer $750. Now you've went above and beyond your hourly rate. Remember, your hourly rate was just covering bills plus some profit. You want to be more than profitable at every chance possible, and not to get as much from the customer as you can, but to get all of your experience, all of your time, all of the insurance, all of the effort, all of the diligence, all of the know-how. How do you quantify that? How do you quantify that by the hour? That's why I don't charge by the hour. I'm not interested in trading time for money. And the reason is people are always looking over your shoulders, seeing how long it took you. How long did it take you? Well, they were out there taking a smoke break. You were out there on the phone for 10 minutes. What if I want to take a 10-minute phone call? That's why I charge flat rate. One of the reasons. They don't ever care how long it takes me because I've given them an upfront price. Here in just a moment, we're going to talk about why I charge flat rate over hourly and how customers aren't just going to give you a blank check. Now let's talk about what it means to bid a job and what it doesn't mean and why I do not charge by the hour. First off, a bid is to offer an upfront estimate on labor costs. This is an estimate, but your customer, even though you say the word estimate, they hear this is the price. And I know you may not feel that way or that's how it should be, but that's what it is. If you tell a customer 450 plus parts, they think the price is 450 plus parts. Yes, it's technically an estimate, but they hear 450 plus parts. So anything outside of that, you're going to need a lot of evidence and understanding on how to approach the customer, which we do cover here in the next slide or in the next few slides. Second off, what it means to bid a job is try your best to stick to that price. I want you to treat it like it's the price. Not, oh, I'll give them a ballpark, get my foot in the door, and then charge them whatever I want. I know people like that, and it has absolutely ruined their reputation. They'll give a super low price to get their foot in the door, and they just charge the customer whatever they want. I'm telling you, it will ruin you in a heartbeat. Let's break this down line by line. First off, it's to offer an upfront estimate on labor cost. Do everything up front, and I'll explain to you why. Have you ever been charging someone by the hour and the whole time you're like, they are going to freak out when they get this price? Or they told you to just go do it and send them a bill, right? Oh, don't worry about an estimate. Just go do it and send me a bill. Let's say you go do a job and the fair market value is $500. Fair market. And you go out and do this job, and the whole time you're at the customer's house, since you didn't give them an upfront price, you're like, they're going to freak out when I give them this bill. I bet they didn't expect the material to be $300, and I bet they're not going to expect me to charge $500. That's a fair price. You even ask your, one of your employees you trust, is $500 fair for this? Yeah, man, that's a great price. That customer, whether you believe it or not, already has a price in their head that they think that job should cost. They have a price in their mind that they think the job should cost, and I promise you it's less than what you think it should be. So let's imagine that the fair market price, me and you could both agree, is $500 for a certain job. Customer tells you, don't worry about a bid. I trust you. Just go out and do it. Send me a bill at the end of the day. In his mind, he's thinking that job should cost $200. He's talked to his wife the night before. They look at the 4 receptacles in the kitchen, whatever. They're like, it shouldn't cost more than a couple $100, honey. Just have him do it. Call him. Okay, they're in agreement. Well, when he gets home from work and you give him a bill for $500 labor and $300 for material, he falls over, right? And the whole point is because everybody has a price. Everybody thinks they're an estimator, whether it's for a pair of shoes, a car, or whatever, or a service. You go out to dinner and you're like, oh man, that piece of cake looks great. But then they tell you it's $8.50 for that slice of cake. You're like, man, I was not expecting $8.50. I thought $4.25 was a fair price. But by the time they do their math, bake the cake and sell it, they got to charge $8.50. It is what it is. I'm telling you, you need to be offering upfront prices. That's why I switch over to flat rate at all costs. Let me ask you a couple questions. Would you write a blank check to a car dealer? Would you write a blank check to a car dealer? I hate giving car dealers money, even if it's money that like it's on the bottom line. I get it, right? Like, no, you would not write a blank check to a car dealer. Let me ask you a question. Would you write a blank check to a grocery store? What if you walked into Publix or Kroger or Winn-Dixie and you walked in and there were no prices on the shelf? None. And it says, we'll bill you when you get there. And they've got somebody up front, depending on what you drove into the parking lot, what you're wearing, what kind of rings you got on your finger, how long you spent in their store, and they're going to change your price based off of that. Would you ever go shopping there? Let me ask you one more. Would you write a blank check to a stranger? Would you write a blank check to a stranger? Let me submit something to you. Even if you're referred by somebody, if you don't know the customer, you're a stranger to them. They're not going to write you a blank check. You're not going to write a blank check to a grocery store. You're not going to write a blank check. Here, fill in the price. Do whatever you want. Stop asking people to do that for you. When you ask a customer to let you charge by the hour, you don't know it, but you're asking them to let you write a blank check in their name. They don't know how much it's going to be the whole time they're at work, right? They make $45 an hour. You're charging $150. So the whole time he's at work, he's like, how much is this dude going to charge me? Do you guys understand the mental dynamic of this? It's so important. The world charges by the hour. The world trades their time for money. They speak that language fluently, right? If you tell a man that you charge $150 an hour and he makes $45 an hour and he's 50 years old with two master's degrees, don't you think for a second that he knows how to count? He looks at you at 35 and says, you're making 3 times as much money an hour for me, but he's not calculating your overhead, your insurance, your employees, and all that stuff. But do you understand the dynamic? You are a stranger to this homeowner, and you're asking them to let you write a blank check with your money. That may be why you're losing some of your jobs or not having the reputation that you want to have, is because you're asking a complete stranger to let you just bill them when you're done, when you don't know how long it's going to take. Do you see the dynamic there? I've got to get this across to you. First off, you're leaving so much money on the table, money that is your money. Right? You go out and charge $150 for the first hour. I switch it over to flat rate pricing, charge $180 for the total thing, and I made the. Do you see where we're going with this? I want you to get your mind away from trading time for money, communicating with customers time and money, and just go to fair, flat rate pricing, communicating with the customer upfront what it costs, so there's no sticker shock, right? You tell him $450 plus parts. At the end of the 8-hour workday, he gets home from work. He comes home to stroke you a check. You walk him around the kitchen, show him the receptacles, and you give him the bill for $450 plus parts. And he will beat down the door to come back to your business. He'll tell all of his neighbors and his aunts and his uncles that this person gave me a quote, and they stuck to it, because the whole time they're at work, they are wondering what the bill's going to be. The whole time while you're at their house working and they're at work, all they're thinking about is how high or how low this bill is going to be. And if they come home from work after working all day for only $200, and you come home and your original bid was $450, and you're like, it took me a little longer than I thought, now it's $650, and you don't have any good justification for that, I promise you're going to have a terrible reputation. People are not going to call you back. You're going to put a bad taste in people's mouth. If you really want to be the best, if you really want to go to the next level, if you really want to have a phone that rings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if you really want to only be able to take 6 out of 10 jobs, you've got to decide that you're going to be the best communicator, the best speaker, the best in delivering the price, the best in sticking to your price. That's why we're taking this estimating series, so you can be excellent at giving the price, excellent at sticking to the price, and excellent at driving home that price. This is when you go from average to excellence. This is when you stop leaving money on the table. This is when you start going to that next level of your career. This is when you become everything that you know that you can become in business. Stop playing games. Stop running that subpar business. Stop being mediocre. Start doing the things that it takes to get you where you want to go. I know that you can do it. We're going to stop there for today. I'm going to show you how to bid a job, what it means to bid a job in the next video. We're going to go through how to bid the job, when it's okay to ask for more money, how to approach the customer if something did get left off the estimate. We're going to go through all of those tactics in the next video. In this one, I want you to take your time. I want you to let all of this soak in. We're going through this series very slowly because this is the fabric that makes up whether or not you are successful in business. I'm telling you, it's grit. Yes, it's physical labor. A lot of it's mental, a lot of it's psychological of how we interact with society. I don't want you ever duping anybody, tricking anybody, telling somebody they need work done that they don't need work done. All of that stuff we're not talking about here. We're talking about your delivery of a premium price, but delivering a super premium level of service, so you can be the best in town. You can be the one that they call on when they need advice. You can be the one that they want to be the president of the local electrical contractor association. Do you get what I'm saying? We want you to be the best. We want you to be the one that they rely on, one that they call on, so you can be an asset to your industry and you can live a successful life. I am the electrical code coach, and my bargain is that these videos will add value to you, and you will in turn go out and add value to others. If there's anything you need from me, I just want to see you win. You can email me at electricalcodecoach@gmail.com. Let's get to it.